goodness. Big move Monday. Look out. A way to end the tournament.
So welcome back, people, to episode 2 of the Quad Pod. And we're officially going to call people that are our subscribers the Quad Squad. I think it kind of works.
No, quadrupeds.
You would like quadrupeds. I don't think they would really enjoy that as much as Quad Squad. So I'm going to go Quad
I
Squad.
would.
I think it works a little bit better. But we appreciate you guys first and foremost subscribing. We're still on the upswing, but we appreciate the people that were over on the intermat side that have followed us over here, particularly our man Slap the Mat, who, if you realized, is Cornell Kevin. He's letting us know where his fanship now lies. And
his name's Kevin.
And we've got another Kevin in the mix.
Wow. I can support both of those things.
So yes. But as I said, welcome back to the Quad Pod, sponsored by Poseidon Strength. We've got Robbie, Austin, Kevin, myself, and as I said, we really, really appreciate you guys leaving comments, sending emails, letting us know that you're happy that the team is still together and we're under a new name. Make sure that, you are sharing with your friends on YouTube, listening on any of your podcast platforms, which, will ultimately be probably Amazon, Spotify, Apple, any of those. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Use our discount code on Poseidon Strength. That is Quad Pod. Whenever you go on there, get your fitness stuff going. We will be representing them throughout the entire year and throughout the entire season. So make sure you guys do visit that and check out, kind of the really cool stuff that they have. With that said, if this is the first time you're tuning in, if you missed last week's episode, the first thing that we do is, just like any match, tournament, dual meet, whatever you want to call it, we weigh in first. And we either will have a rant, we'll shout somebody out, or we'll just kind of give a little bit of praise for something that we saw. So to start out, I want to give a shout out to the hometown. I did not go to Easton High School. I went to Wilson High School, which is right across the street. However, Easton High School does have a new head wrestling coach in Corey Keener. And Corey Keener honestly has been an assistant and has been doing a great job with Easton for a very long time. More behind the scenes, going to be more on the forefront now that he is the head man for the job. They also do have a women's team too, a girls team at Easton too. So the girls are getting in the mix in the Lehigh Valley as well, which you'd love to see. My alma mater over at Wilson also has a girls team too. But major props to Corey Keener. As I said, he's been doing really great job, really great job as an assistant. And now getting the head coaching gig was, honestly, it was a no-brainer. If they would have gone with anyone else, it would have been really, really dumb. So good job by Easton to keep Corey Keener in the seat, in the corner, I guess I should say, but elevate him to where he is supposed to be. And I'm sure Kevin, who will be chiming in here in a little bit, is happy to see Corey Keener coaching as well.
Fire up chips.
When Easton hires somebody, do they have to go before the board and say, Red Rover, send Corey right over? Is that how that works?
They don't. There probably is a bit of ass kissing that is necessary. Just knowing, just knowing some of the old people that were part of that administration. But no, I don't think anymore. I don't think there's any more Red Rover that needs to be played. But I do hope that they continue to make upgrades, and Corey Keener is certainly another upgrade and another guy that I think should be in the position that he's in, because he's done a really, really good job. Kevin, you can continue the conversation.
Yeah, let's get a couple shout outs in here. I had written down Miles Amin. His name is now immortalized at the Olympic. I don't know if it was like the Village or whatever they've got in Japan now. But all the wrestlers who medaled there at those Olympics have got it's got their names, it's got the place they took, and it's going to be there forever. So congrats to him on getting that set up there. The pictures of Japan look awesome. I'm not like a big world traveler, but like seeing those pictures and stuff, I was like, damn, like I could totally go to Japan and like not know how to say anything and try to figure it out and be fine with it. I think that's like maybe the only place I would try that. Not a lot
The
of
language of wrestling is international, so I think you'd be okay.
Yeah. Just start grabbing single legs and kicking feet out, and
Just yell two.
it'll be fine. Yeah.
Attention, attention.
But no, I also wanted to shout out. I guess we're going to be talking some women's wrestling today. I was going to wear my Alma women's wrestling shirt. Shout out to Caitlin Pizzo Monroe, head coach there. And then I wanted to shout out Greg Warren. I watched his special, The Champ, over the weekend. It's his new special on YouTube, produced by Nate Bargatze. Greg Warren wrestled at Missouri. It was an All-American, I think, back in '91, but like professional stand-up comedian, super funny. And it was hilarious. It was really good. I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to, but there was one part where he just brought up the whole idea that there's like schools that have like competitive fishing, and like he's like, then that means that there's a fishing coach, and if they're anything like my coach, and he's just yelling at him and everything, it's really good. Highly recommend it.
Nice. Yeah, we will talk some women's wrestling. I know Austin's rocking a Lehigh shirt, which we'll get to. But before that, let's go over to Robbie and see what he's got.
I'm just thankful that for this weigh-in, I don't have to strip down to my underwear. And I think all the YouTube viewers are probably thankful for that as well. Brian Reiner posted, former SID for NC State, posted a really interesting fact the other day that NC State has had a wrestler in every single Final X since the inception of the event, which is pretty awesome. And they got another one this year, and it's pretty cool to see this. I can't even say it. Sustained success. There we go. That's a tough one to get her out.
It's a lot of S's there.
As much as we love alliteration in wrestling, I would not put those two words together. But it's great to see the success they continue to have down there, with Jamil doing a great job running the club. So kudos to them.
Sustained success metrics.
See?
Yeah. It's that sucks. Searching for syllables right now is searching for syllables 101 happening right now in the intro.
Man.
But yeah, I mean, I did see that. That is really, really awesome that they can continue to sustain that success.
Think of how much worse that would have been if I was just in my underwear.
This is true. It would have been even more embarrassing if you
some of us would like it more.
I mean, subscribers probably would have went through the roof, to be completely honest. So maybe no. But yeah, shout out to Jamil. I talk to that man just about every single day, and it is rarely ever about wrestling, or any of the jobs that any of us are doing, to be completely honest. It rarely ever comes up. So but yeah, he's doing a great job. I think it was kind of like under the radar that he became the head RTC coach. There wasn't really an announcement or anything else. I had, obviously sent him a text and was like, hey, when can I write about this? That like when are we putting this out? And he's like, well, let me talk to Pat and see when we're gonna put anything out. And I don't think that anything. I think there's something small.
It was like a
maybe.
paragraph.
Yeah, but it was
Pat's not big for fanfare.
It was not
a big fanfare guy.
Yeah, exactly. But if you know Jamil, he is not that kind of a guy. He does not smile very often.
I've heard Jamil say, I think, 4 words in the entirety of the time that I've been around him. So,
yeah, he's actually hilarious. He's becoming a brother to me, honestly. Love that guy. But Austin, I know, as I said, we're going to talk some women's wrestling. So take it away.
Yeah, I'm rocking my Lehigh wrestling t-shirt here, extra medium size, if you guys are wondering. It was just announced, I think today, that the women's team has been elevated to the varsity level at Lehigh, which is awesome. They're the 6th Division I team to do so. And they have some talent already lined up in the on the roster there, including Audrey Jimenez. She was 2nd last year at Final X, lost to Sarah Hildebrandt, who was a gold medalist, as you guys know.
It turns out she was good.
Yeah, she's pretty dang good. And she was only a senior in high school at the time, so she's still young. They have 2 people coming in that won U20 national champions. Aubrey Kraser, who is from Easton, coached by Corey Keener, as Holmes said, and Abby Cooper. They're both competing at U20 Worlds in August here. So, yeah, just because they're a new program, you expect some lumps, but maybe not with Lehigh, because they have some really talented people in the room already. Their RTC has been kind of focusing on women's wrestling as well as the men's, so they got legit coaching staff in there. They got legit wrestlers and, they're ready to go. And they're actually the second team in the EIWA to add women's wrestling. Sacred Heart has had one for a while. People maybe forget about that, but, they were kind of pioneers, which is actually their mascot. So it's funny on the women's side as well. So EIWA is, putting forth a lot of great effort in the women's side. And in a few years or so too, you're going to see stuff from, the Ivy Leagues as well. Princeton has one in the works that not official yet, but, in the next few years here, they're going to be varsity. That's just been a long time coming. Penn, Columbia, and I think even like Drexel is kind of in that club scene right now, eventually elevating themselves to varsity. Could be next year, could be 2-3 years down the line, but, expect more of that coming from Pennsylvania, Jersey, Ivy, EIWA leagues coming forward here.
Yeah, it's the announcement came out earlier today, and if you didn't realize, they have a good sized team already there. Head over to lehighsports.com and you can see their entire roster. Coach Marquez is, the only coach that they have set for the women right now. I'm sure some of the men will obviously help out, as it's probably been more of an RTC kind of a thing until they've gotten this varsity status. Being from Lehigh Valley, obviously I'm getting kind of inundated with a lot of texts and stuff today from everybody back home talking about this, as well as seeing Brad Wilson put out, his article about it. So make sure you guys go check that out too. Brad has done a phenomenal job covering wrestling. I used to work with Brad on wrestling when I was with the Express Times. Literally my first sports journalist job was with the Express Times. So, and I learned a lot from Brad, as you can expect, two very opinionated people, didn't always get along, but I always appreciate the time that I had with Brad and learned a ton. But Lehigh getting a varsity team in women's wrestling, as you said, it is kind of a long time coming. And as I mentioned, Easton has their own girls team. My high school, Wilson, has their own girls team. So being in the Lehigh Valley and being a female wrestler, it is certainly growing a ton. Muhlenberg, which is 10-15 minutes away, Muhlenberg College Division III, they also have a women's team too. So, and there's a lot of collaboration between those two schools when it comes to just kind of training together, and making sure that basically everyone in the Lehigh Valley is growing. Men, women, everyone is growing when it comes to that. But I want to kind of turn it over to you guys. When you, obviously there's no bad thoughts about this, but when you saw that Lehigh was going to be having a team, what were your thoughts? Was there anyone that you guys spoke to or anything else like that when you saw that we were getting another women's team, that women's was growing? Austin, you already spoke. Kevin, why don't you go ahead?
I'll go, but I have a story. I mean, it's great. It's really great. I'm super pumped about it. It's really cool the way that they did it, and I feel like it's kind of like what Oklahoma State's trying to do too, which is just basically bring in like studs and basically force the athletic director to like make a change and show like, look, we're already recruiting, we're already doing all of the things. You have a good program here. You just need to pull the trigger, So that's a pretty cool way of going about it. And I mean, I'm sure there was some buy-in from the athletic department too, right? This doesn't happen overnight or by accident. Like clearly, the community, like you said, surrounding it is completely bought in too. But it's very exciting. But I wanted to tell the story of how I became familiar with Lehigh to begin with, because I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I'm wrestling in high school, and I had no idea about Lehigh. Just not a knock on Lehigh. I just am not from Pennsylvania and hadn't been aware of it. But there was this guy, he would come down to our high school rooms, and he was just this guy who wrestled at Lehigh back in the day. I remember somebody was like, oh, there's the crazy Lehigh man. And I was like, what's Lehigh? And they were like, that's some school in Pennsylvania. This guy wrestled there. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he would just kick the shit out of us. And he'd show up, all 4 years I was there and without any rhyme or reason. And I was like, oh shit, it's crazy Lehigh, man. He's here again.
And if you don't know, now you know.
Yeah, and that's how I became familiar with Lehigh. So I'm just glad that over the last, 22 years since I graduated high school, or whatever, we've gotten to this point where now I can transition from crazy Lehigh man and, the Mitch Minottis of the world and all, Darian Cruz and all, the awesome guys that we've got to see over the years at Lehigh. And now we're going to see some awesome women as well. So very excited for that.
Little did Kevin know that was John Trench that was coming in.
Yeah, John.
Was he wearing goggles?
Shout out to John Trench, man. That dude does not get enough credit historically for how badass he was. I mean, his only losses in the finals were to Cale Sanderson,
who,
and Damian Hahn, right? Yeah, so did all right for himself.
There's a whole documentary about him. Kev, you should check it out.
Have you seen Veritas? It's fantastic.
I've not. I've been told about it. I've not gotten around to finding it.
I have the DVD. I can send it to you. I used to have my kids watch it before postseason every year, and it was just a good way to get hyped up and see, overcoming some difficult circumstances and still being successful, and then dealing with the frustration of not reaching your ultimate goal. And you did a fantastic job with the documentary, and it's certainly worth watching. Hard to find now because it's on DVD, and nobody has a DVD player.
What the hell is that?
I do. I just watched the Bruce Lee story on Amazon Prime the other day. That's really good too. Sounds like pretty similar.
Same.
I think it is. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. Remind me and I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that sentiment of you look back and see how far women's wrestling in general has come, but for Austin and I, two guys from the Lehigh Valley, I used to go to Lehigh wrestling camp, and Corey Cooperman and Trench and all those guys were still there when I was in high school, going to Lehigh camp and learning from those guys. And, now you look and they have the RTC and Giuseppe Ray, who is a Wilkes grad, who's also an assistant coach at Muhlenberg, who was training with Darian before Darian went off to Penn, is in the mix over there with the RTC. But now you, like I said, you have the women that are going to now have a team and, once again, represented at Final X again this year as well, too. So, my bias is always going to want to see anybody that reps the Lehigh Valley in any capacity, win the spot or, take the title or whatever else. But yeah, very, very happy to see how much wrestling is expanding, specifically back home, and seeing how many girls are getting that opportunity. Austin, you talked about Princeton. Obviously that's an Ayers product. Everything that has gone on at Princeton, Chloe Ayers has been, carrying that torch for a very long time and has continued to do so, even with, her family headed out to the West Coast and being with Stanford now. So it's awesome to see women's wrestling growing and everything else. Robbie, any other comments you want to add?
I guess my only thing with it is I think it's going to be really interesting to see as women's wrestling expands in D1, how it's going to affect smaller schools and what's going to happen to them. Because everything in women's wrestling has been so centered around smaller D2, D3, NAIA schools that, they have well-established programs and they have that core of recruiting that they've had forever. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. I mean, we saw Iowa come in and get all these huge recruits right away. And obviously they want to wrestle for that brand and have that exposure at the major institution that with the history they have. So it's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. And I'm hopeful that there's room for competitive programs across the board. And my hope is that it doesn't take away from those institutions that have been on the forefront for women's wrestling.
It should stay relatively competitive, I would think, across all divisions for a while. I mean, you've even seen some of the people who went to Iowa who just don't get a spot in the lineup and they transfer away, and like you do with the men's side too. You want to compete, and you don't want to be, second string. You're stuck behind somebody for whatever reason. So, that should theoretically get some more competition across the whole landscape instead of just, in Iowa City.
Yeah.
And more eyes on it is going to be better. It's
Mhm.
more exposure for them is just going to lead to more programs coming, and it's ultimately it's growing the sport, which we've seen, kind of explode over the last 10, 15 years. And there's been so many people who, have been at the crux of that, and, a lot of people to name here. So I'm not going to just name one person and make people mad. But the leadership in women's wrestling across the board, from USA Wrestling to all the institutions, has been fantastic.
Yeah, and we talked last week about Sarah Hildebrandt when we were talking about Skylar, and how Skylar said, having Sarah in her corner has made a huge difference, right? You see how Skylar's match, and Skylar said herself, it was a boring match, but the most tactical of matches is usually a game of inches. And I think both her and Amit had very similar styles and similar tactics. So that's why it just seemed like, a couple bulls locking horns. But the overall notion of how women's wrestling is growing, right? And how you're seeing Sarah Hildebrandt go from Olympic champion, world champion, Olympic champion after a devastating injury, by the way, to now becoming the head coach, right? You're seeing Jenna Burkett, now the head women's coach, as well. Camera's going a little wonky. Now being the head women's coach as well, for a high school. So that's the part for me where all of these women that kind of paved the way when it was just an RTC type of a thing. It wasn't a full on Division I sport. And now you're seeing how it is a Division I sport. You're seeing the facility at Iowa, and, the tours being done by our world and Olympic medalists, right? On these levels that Iowa has in their program, and Clarissa Chun is running things, right? So just so many of the legendary women that we have had are still paving the way, but now they're doing it from the coaching chair. And I think as long as we continue to keep those women in the sport, we're going to be in very good hands on the women's side. It's obviously yet to be determined what Helen does whenever she's done. She's obviously done some grappling, and she's done some jujitsu, which caused a stir in the BJJ community when they were really pissed off. But she wasn't bringing any rules, and I think we talked about that too before. But like, just seeing how these women are transitioning into really great coaches. And, it's obviously been happening for a very long time, because you go to Fargo, and the women's coaches in Fargo, they are the women that were at the highest level for Team USA a time ago. So it is pretty cyclical, but I feel like now with the exposure that these women get and the support that they get, and I guess you can say the support that wrestling gets in general, the faces and names, they're household names in the community, where, you can't walk 5 steps without seeing a medalist that is super recognizable because of all of the support. And, Lehigh getting a team, and, the high schools getting a team. And I think it's sanctioned in 46 states now, as well as a varsity sport for women. So things are certainly coming along, and we have so many of these women who are now coaches to thank for all the work that they put in to get us to this point. Any other thoughts or anything, or can we move on to our next topic, gentlemen?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, the PIAA just sanctioned women's wrestling like 2 or 3 years ago. They were late to the game. So now you're seeing more
Very.
schools, you're seeing more high schools get teams together, which is going to get more girls out for the sport, which is going to eventually lead to more opportunities, so Lehigh being in the midst of what maybe Holmes and I will call it wrestling mecca. Others might disagree with us. It's just good for the sport. And
They're free to be loud and wrong, Austin. Don't you worry about them
I take some
disagreeing.
pride. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I think the last thing I want to say on this is think about it, the societal changes over the last 25 years and more progressive thought towards, women's wrestling as a whole. And I mean, you said they were late to the game 2 years ago. I remember I had a boss a couple of years ago, and, I mentioned something about women's wrestling, and she was like, "Oh, I don't like that," or whatever. And I just remember being like, "What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, what's
like,
wrong
what?"
with you?
Because do you understand how archaic that sounds? Like, just you're stupid. Anyway, so yeah, it's very, very good, very progressive, and that has that, plus again the people just continuing to commit themselves to the sports over the years has been great. So
Agreed. Let's move to the men's side of things, men's freestyle, and talk suspensions. I know it's a complete 180 as to the uplifting topic we were just talking about. Um, well, let's start with Snyder. When we recorded last week, he had just had his trial. Pled guilty, fines, whatever. And since then, the suspension from Safe Sport has been lifted, which is probably the quickest suspension I have ever seen. Um, I honestly don't really have much. What did you guys think of the news that Snyder's suspension was lifted? And Robbie, I'm going straight to you because I know you probably can't wait to jump on this.
I mean, it's not surprising when he was suspended is because he was arrested for a crime that was related to moral turpitude, if you want to call it that. But it was this
allegedly.
allegedly. We've seen the videos, and he pled
there's
guilty
no
to
alleged.
a crime associated with that. So there's the allegedly is gone.
Disorderly.
Yeah, he was certainly disorderly. There's not a lot of order going on there. Well, you ordered something, but that's a whole other conversation.
Disorder.
The suspension was related to the actual crime itself, and when he pled down to a lesser offense, Safe Sport was no longer had the footing to say, it's a safety issue or it's related to a violation of the ethics of Safe Sport. So they don't have any ground to hold him for a suspension. My hope and bigger picture would be that I don't know. I'll happily beat this drum. I think he should take a step back and take some time off, whether that is on his own volition or at the direction of USA Wrestling saying, this happened. We know, yes, it's just a misdemeanor. It was just a $250 fine. The optics of it and the reality of the situation we all saw, right? It's not a good look for anybody involved. It's not a good look for USA Wrestling to just be like, fuck it, it's fine, no worries. Just go on, do what you want to do. Just because he pled to disorderly conduct, everyone knows what really happened. Everyone knows what the actual charge was, what the actual arrest was for. And I think somebody needs to step in and say, we need to take a step back, take some time off. Maybe we don't have the best option as a rep at 97 this year because, Snyder is our best option. But I think this is an opportunity for it to be a learning experience for everybody that looks up to him. And if he's supposed to be, this key fixture for USA Wrestling, I think it says a lot to just turn away and look the other way when this happens and just continue on like nothing did happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the thing for me is that, and obviously no one has to answer to the four of us or really anyone, right? Like it's not like he owes us anything. I mean, I feel like if anything, he owes the wrestling community more than anything because they have had his back through his wins, his losses, and if you've paid any attention, very much so through this. Which again, I am here nor there on, right? Like if you want to support Kyle Snyder, you support Kyle Snyder. Like I support Kyle as a wrestler. I support him as a person, honestly, because I've known him for a very long time. And this is the first time that he's ever messed up. And we all make mistakes. Some people make bigger mistakes than others. And Kyle certainly made that. But I feel like if he owes anyone, um, it's the wrestling community. It's the kids that grow up wanting to be Kyle Snyder as a wrestler. Um, because as we just mentioned on the women's side of things, we are privileged to have the Sarah Hildebrands in the corner, the Jenna Burkett's in the corner, the Clarissa Chun's in the corner, right? We're privileged to have those things. Adeline Gray also was a coach at Wyoming Sem while she was still competing, right? So we are privileged to have those things. And on the women's side, those girls looked up and still look up to them. On the men's side, Kyle Snyder is now one of those types of guys where Jordan Burroughs is looked up to, David Taylor, Kyle Dake, and obviously Kyle Snyder. So I feel like while it was good in the sense that he put out the statement that he put out, I feel like to the community and to the kids, there was probably a little bit more owed there. And I think we went into it on the last show too, of like, he needs to kind of have some sort of redemption,
Ownership.
right? Yeah. Like some sort of ownership of it, outside of in trial where he obviously took ownership of it. But obviously
No.
well, I mean, he had to, because that's what got him to the lesser means of all of these things. So he had to take some sort of ownership. On top of that, I don't really like the lack of statement from USA Wrestling too. Them being quiet about everything is kind of tough for people that watch a governing body get all of the praise when we win and all of the vitriol when the mats are slippery or the venue isn't good, right? Like, and there should be some sort of just statement of, obviously you don't condone these types of things, but say we're behind Kyle if Kyle needs help with something, if we need to support him in some sort of capacity, if this is an issue, like something, right? So that's where it kind of falls short for me is, the reconciliation of all of it hasn't been the best in my opinion. And I feel like that's owed to the community, whether you support Kyle or whether you don't think he should be able to wrestle at Final X. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. And, I'm hopeful that, as Kevin mentioned at the last show, that it is getting right with his family and himself before it's polishing up some technique to prepare for Hayden Zilmer should he step on the mat. So those are certainly the priorities, but the lack of, I guess, like public accountability is what is kind of confusing, because we've seen guys be suspended for longer when they never got arrested. We've seen guys have worse punishments, right? We've seen, call it what it is. Zahid got in trouble for drugs. Jo got, in trouble for some drug tests as well, failing drug tests, whether it was weed, Adderall, whatever it was, but neither one of them were arrested and they were punished for it. The punishment for Kyle Snyder is kind of TBD. And obviously maybe there are meetings around this happening right now that either don't include Kyle or do include Kyle. But there's got to be something that comes from our governing body. That's why you are the governing body. It's why it's in the name. And you've been silent about these things as far as we can see. So I'm still anxious to see if that kind of a statement does come out. And if they do, say anything about it. Austin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's where is USA Wrestling into saying, hey, we made this decision because of XYZ factors. Kyle has, he's going to, I'm sure, I hope he comes out with a statement, and not just what he posted, a Bible verse. I think it was, that's all he said. It was, to me, it's like I think you do owe an apology. Again, it's not to me, it's not to the fans, it's to people, the kids that looked out to him, people that buy his gear, people that support him and Rudis, and they call him Captain America, so if he's not Captain America, I think this suspension looks differently. I think it would be longer, but he's put in the work to earn this nickname, and he's never been in trouble like you guys have mentioned. So I see both sides of it, but again, I think the transparency from somebody that says, "Hey, here's what happened. Here's what the plans are, and here's how we're going to move forward and hopefully put this behind us and get Kyle the help he needs, the services, whatever it is." But yeah, the silence is what I think bothers me the most. Kind of what you were saying, Holmes. It's, where's the accountability? Where's responsibility? Where's something from anybody, essentially, right?
And understanding that it's kind of a gray area, right? Because had the charges stayed what they were, it's not very gray. It's within the morality clause of the contracts, within safe sport, pretty easy to deal with on that side. When he pleads down to a really low misdemeanor that, effectively is just the same as yelling drunkenly outside, it makes it a tougher spot for them to stand on, I guess, legally. But I think my biggest problem is that it's so publicly facing, and it was so outright and so visible to so many people, that to not have any stance whatsoever after the fact, after it's already been concluded, after he pled down to this, so that the criminal aspect of it is resolved. And we still, a week later, crickets, right? Crickets out of Colorado Springs. And, maybe they're trying to figure out, maybe they're meeting with their lawyers and saying, where are we at with this and what do we do? But I think there's got to be something. Like, we can't just see our biggest star arrested for soliciting a prostitute and on video in the state he was in, and then have nothing come of it. No statement, nothing. It's baffling.
Yeah, are they hoping this goes away quietly? I don't think that's going to happen.
That video's not going away.
Yeah, like, it's the internet's forever, right? And especially when TMZ posted, and like ABC News and all these high level media people got a hold of it. So yeah, it definitely puts a black eye on the wrestling community as a whole. But how do you rectify that? Is it a public apology? Is it clinics? Whatever it is. I'm talking out my ass here, but something needs to be done to kind of get the support back in his way and kind of help water under that bridge.
Well, in all fairness, like in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, didn't he get a prostitute? Maybe I was watching something else. I'm sorry. But no, if it helps, I've been asking people outside of wrestling if they have heard of Kyle Snyder, and the answer is always no. And B, then I tell them about what happened to Kyle Snyder, and you know what? They don't care. Well, special people get special treatment, so like that's kind of what this is. It doesn't need to be more. And I'm not saying it's right, but it's the way that it always worked, right?
My question is, do we see him at Final X, Kevin?
I mean, probably, yeah. I fully expect him to be there. And I said it last week, like, I'm not going to necessarily judge the guy for being there. If he's allowed to be there, like, and he wants to compete, and it's, again, something he can control in the most chaotic and, like, awful part of his life probably to this point, he'll probably want to go there and do the thing that he's been good at. And who knows, maybe he'll use some of that platform to, provide the apology that it sounds like we all kind of want, right? So I don't know. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. If he wants to compete and they're going to allow him to compete, I also would move that we change the name Safe Sport to something different, because this doesn't help anyone feel more safe. This seems like a loophole to get the best guy at 97 to be able to compete. That's all this is. So,
I mean, with anything, there's always going to be some sort of, there is at all times, right? Like, we talk about special treatment. There's always going to be special treatment for certain people. When you win and you're a winner and you have the support that you have, you're going to have that kind of support. on the opposite side of that, though, I will say that when Gable got in trouble and there was no court case, there was no trials, there was no nothing. It was investigated, everything was dropped, everything went away. But still to this day, if somebody posts about him, they still bring up his allegations.
I had somebody bring it up to me in the car like 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's actually like none of that. Like,
Was it
it's
your
all
wife?
good. Yeah. No, it wasn't. It's not her. No.
You know,
But
but,
I was
and
I was
that's what I'm
blown
saying
away.
is like people wanted to see, and they still do. They want to see Gable fail. They do. They were. I mean, obviously, he is, a hell of an athlete and has had the opportunities that people probably want for themselves. And in the wrestling community, they can't stand it. And the same thing is starting to spill over a little bit on Mason Paris, because Mason Paris was part of Michigan's Pro Day, where they're like, wait a second, no, you're good at wrestling. Like, stay here. They have enough good people over there. So they get mad that, any of our good wrestlers attempt some other new thing. But like I said, with Gable, and I'm sure that it will happen with Kyle, but the support that Kyle is getting is completely different than the way that Gable was treated. And the situations are completely different. Gable was arrested and was never charged with anything. Everything was gone after the investigation, done. Different on Kyle's side. Obviously they gave him a slap on the wrist because he's never been in trouble before, this, that, whatever. But it's just, I hate to see the special treatment in cases where, and obviously I don't think that he should have gone to jail. So I'm not saying that. But I hate to see how the court of public opinion decides what type of support our wrestlers need. When if you look at both Gable and you look at Kyle Snyder, only one of them has a record as of right now. You know what I mean? And one was not treated the same when everything went down. It was very different. So I don't know. I think that I think just like Kevin that we will see him at Final X. And I don't really see a big problem with that. I just don't like that it seems like everyone is rushing to say that's not Kyle Snyder, that wasn't him, when it was. Like, we saw it on video. Like, he did these things. He committed this crime. We saw all of these things. So, I'm not trying to assassinate his character, but I'm also not trying to say that the crime he committed was not him either.
It'd be real weird if there was just another big ass dude wearing Rudis stuff who claims that he lives in Pennsylvania at the end of the video.
Well, I mean, there probably is a really big ass dude that lives in Pennsylvania that rocks Rudis.
Couple.
There's a
Probably,
couple.
yeah.
There's a good bit. As Austin and I have let you know, that it is the wrestling mecca in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So there is that. But on the other side,
Is John Trench still in Pennsylvania?
I think so.
Pretty sure he probably wears Rudis. He's a big ass dude.
He probably does. Zach Ray is still there as well. He's still a very
John's
also
like,
a
it was
big-ass
cool
dude.
when you guys talked about me earlier, but like, leave my name out of this.
Stay out of this one.
Yeah, he's
But
like, I wear glasses, bro.
continuing in that vein of suspensions, there was the Gilman suspension, which to me holds zero water. Like, I don't know, Robbie. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a bigger deal than is being led on, because he just went back. Because he just went back to Nittany Lion Wrestling Club as the head RTC coach. He's banned by USA Wrestling now with the suspension, so he can't coach. Like, that's across the board. Athlete.
That's what I'm saying.
Coach.
Is he banned as a coach or is he banned as a wrestler?
Both. That membership is exclusive. Once you're banned, you're out. You can't transition just, well, I was an athlete who's banned, so now I'm going to coach. No, it's across the board. Your membership suspended. So, petty as it may be, like this could be a real issue. So, I mean, he's suspended because he had three, was it called, whereabouts
Yeah.
violations where they showed up to test him, or he wasn't where he said he was, or they showed up to test and he wasn't there. Sounded like one of them, they showed up to Happy Valley and he was down in Stillwater when he was on a recruiting trip. So
Yeah.
like there's valid reasons why he wasn't there to be tested.
Same thing that
But like
happened with Kamal Bay.
yeah, but you have to provide your whereabouts at all times when you're on the testing list. And that's, maybe wasn't on his mind as important because he wasn't actively competing. But he hadn't officially retired, so he was still on the list to be tested. Thus, he still falls under all those rules. So, as dumb as it may be, and it's a pretty petty suspension. Oh, you weren't here when we tested you, but you're not actively competing, so it doesn't matter anyway. But like it could have some serious ramifications.
Yeah, but if he would have just said that he was retired, then none of this would be going on, right? And
Correct.
so I wonder, and the thing is that he's just accepting the suspension. So I wonder if that changes like now when he's like, I'll accept the suspension. I'm not trying to compete. But then when they're like, well, it kind of goes across, all lines right now. He may have to be like, well, I was retired, right? I wasn't actively competing. I was coaching. I had, decided I was retired, whatever. Even though there was a post that said not retired in that
Yeah,
entire time
that may
span.
bite him in the ass.
So that's the thing for me is like where does this put Thomas Gilman as a coach, right? Is he like what happens? What's the fallout from this? I haven't watched Bosch's show with Willie yet, but and I'm sure he has the details. He said that he had spoken to Kyle Snyder. He said that he had spoken to Thomas Gilman as well on a number of shows because those guys are his clients, so he's close with them. But I I don't know. I think it's a dumb
Not a good week
suspension.
for those websites.
Yeah. I think it's a dumb suspension ultimately, right?
Agreed.
Like he's not entered in any tournaments. Like I think that USADA could have done their due diligence and said, "Listen, are you competing? Do you have plans to compete?"
Especially after two of them. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
hey,
yeah,
you're on
yeah.
the
Like
verge of suspension if this happens again. Are you still active? Do you want to still be in this list? Like, do you want to
exactly.
be in this on this protocol? Because if not, and you're dinged again, then you're suspended.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is Gilman should have known he failed twice and needed one more. If
Yeah,
you go through this testing, you or someone around you should know, like, hey, if you're not wrestling, put your name in for retirement, get your name off lit, whatever it is to avoid this. So
you can
I
always
mean, I
re-enter.
thought it could have maybe
Yeah.
reached out a little more, but I mean, how much responsibility can we take off of Gilman?
Yeah, you
He's
can
a grown adult.
unretire. That is
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
you
Ask
can
Michael
say, hey,
Jordan.
I'm retired, or take me off this list, whatever. But yeah, and like to Robbie's point, I think he does lose his or not yet his USA wrestling card. So yeah, he's not allowed to coach with RTCs, but listen to a little bit what Willie was saying. There's nothing that prevents him from being at a Penn State practice versus a Nittany Lion Wrestling Club practice, or going up
Except
the
he's
street.
not on staff, so then you're going to have,
Yeah.
NCAA potential NCAA violations because
Well, if
then
they're
there's not the
volunteer
overlap
workouts,
and
Yeah,
yeah,
you can
there's
consider
a lot of
him.
loopholes.
yeah, they're
Yeah,
But
going
there's
to
a lot of
M2
loopholes.
training. It's a mile up the road or whatever. That's completely separate from Penn State. So there are loopholes, which
And not for nothing, the new it hasn't been, you know, brought into effect yet. However, the new like roster cap rules and all that other stuff, they're also changing the amount of coaches that you can have, where it's basically an unlimited coaches. So for football, for instance, you used to if you were tagged as an analyst, you're not an actual coach, so you cannot coach any position group for football. Now they can tag anyone as an analyst and they can be on the field talking to players, coaching, this, that, and whatever. So
like
that
Belichick.
might be a way to allow him to kind of come in and be an analyst or you know what I mean? So I think there's probably ways around it, but like I feel like in order for him to be the probably the coach that they want him to be, they might have to say, oh well, now uh I'm not going to just accept the suspension. I'm going to fight the suspension, and I'll say I was actually retired. I just never, filed the paperwork because I had transitioned into coaching, this, that, and whatever done.
And maybe there's like a pseudo suspension saying he can't re-enter the protocol for 2 years or whatever it could be.
Exactly.
Like there's
Right.
certainly ways around it. I just think you wouldn't want us to invite more attention when you already have this many people looking for the downfall of Penn State effectively. Like, do you want more attention and more people lodging complaints and making allegations when you have this? Like, you're drawing undue attention to yourself. And with the way you left Stillwater and that fan base being as rabid as they are right now, I don't think they're above, some of them certainly not above lodging complaints for violations of NCAA or USA wrestling stuff.
I think this is so stupid. There's so many adults involved in this shit. Like, what are we doing? Why are we here? And then there's people posting about how he's an addict.
Yeah, I saw that. I was
Addicted
like,
to what? Telling them that you're in one place when you're in another? Like, fuck, it's fun. I don't know. Sorry.
I was looking for Carmen Sandiego.
You
Damn it.
said you were on, ABC Street. Oops, I forgot. I'm not. I'm over here.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude. It's just like, and then it would be an egregious oversight if like you just didn't know that this would affect your coaching, capabilities too. Like Penn State will be fine ultimately.
Yeah.
Like how long is this suspension?
18 months.
18 months.
Yeah,
18 months. Okay, yeah, they'll be fine. They'll hold on with Varner and
They're not hurting for high level coaching.
Yeah, they'll hold on to it.
Yeah.
Pocketbook will be light if you're paying a head coach who can't coach, though. That's interesting.
That's
Yeah,
certainly true.
he won't work any camps to make that up or anything. They're like, there's no loopholes to help make up
No.
the money that he's losing out, right?
No, none at all. We don't have loopholes in this sport.
It's like the director of ops positions. Like, oh, they're not allowed to wrestle on the mat. Oh, okay. But no one's stopping them from getting a volunteer workout with one of the guys before practice action. You're like, there's ways
That's why
around
nobody
it.
will hire me. They don't want me to wrestle with them.
That's true. Be a great director of ops.
Yeah. Let's move on. I think we've given suspensions enough airtime for this.
I don't know. Can we suspend somebody else? I've got a list.
I don't think we need to. I think we've hit our quota of suspending people. I actually want to jump to the future of the sport conversation. And Mike Moyer put out a tweet. When was this? This was last week? Maybe like 10 days ago, a little bit over a week ago. And it was an article from Oregon Live. And in his tweet, he says, this shows that wrestling isn't the only college sport that needs to focus more on team competition. All sports should continue to push creative, team focused formats to grow and stay relevant. And obviously, we pay pretty damn close attention to all these things. And we're possibly losing Cleveland State. Who knows? I mean, I know there's been like politicians have written bills and done different things in Cleveland and in Ohio to make sure that there's funding and this, that, whatever. I have
But
no
hey,
idea.
their president just got a $125,000 bonus, so that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, probably a conversation for a different day. We'll talk about that. But we are seeing a move to more team-based competition in wrestling, literally starting next year with basically bringing back national duels. And with what Mike Moyer is saying, and for those who don't know who Mike Moyer is, he's the executive director of NWCA. And I will put the link to his tweet in the comments so people can go check out the article and everything else. And maybe even respond to Mike Moyer. He doesn't really have a lot of responses to it. Obviously, Pirate is on here, to be completely honest, because that's Pirate. But
Brit or the other one?
Break. That'd be Brit. But I think he's pretty spot on, honestly. The future of Olympic sports in general, and shout out to Costco, honestly, Nick, not the store, putting together.
Shout out to the store though too.
Shout out to the store. Store is awesome. But shout out to Nick Costco for getting all of those coaches on the record last year and asking them about national duels, and then obviously the deep pockets of Oklahoma State and Paycom for what they're doing with national duels and trying to have more of a team focused event. I think Mike Moyer, obviously, he is more in tune with these things. He's in the damn meetings of the future of the sport and trying to make, things better. But I think he's really spot on with what we need to be focusing on. And we talked about it last year, I think at like the midway point of the season, where we were looking at the individual tournaments falling off, right? Midlands is not Midlands anymore. CKLV is, while it does have very good matches in the latter half of it, it is not the same tournament. Scuffle, certainly not the same scuffle that we're used to seeing, right? So all of these individual tournaments have become, they used to be like mandatory type of events that helped everyone get ready for the entire season in NCAAs. Now they're just optional, right? Like, especially Midlands and Scuffle, where it's like, who the hell's going? What kind of matchups do we have? Who's going to be at these individual tournaments? So I think this is kind of spot on of not just for wrestling, but Olympic sports in general, of how they're going to survive is going to be pushing this team aspect, because every other major sport that we have pushes that team aspect, and we could talk about the rapid growth of women's wrestling in general and women's sports overall all we want. But when you look at the growth of women's sports, it's the ones that have the team aspect to them that are doing the best. And you have to look at the women's basketball and all of it, and the WNBA and college basketball and what is going on that side. And then you look at the you look at college football, and you look at all of those different things that are happening, them expanding the playoff and all the different infusions of money that they're trying to get. National duels is our step in that direction. And I think we will be better off if we continue down that path. Obviously, we can, this article isn't about wrestling, but it certainly will help to have that same perspective for wrestling that is being pulled from these other sports. What do you guys think about national duels? I know we've talked about it before, but what do you think of national duels? And do you think that having that team aspect and that team format is how we're going to grow the sport and kind of take up the mantle for Olympic sports? Kevin, I want to hear from you.
I don't know how much of it is going to grow the sport. I mean, it's been an event I've been wanting since we had it the last time. It's just too much fun. Like, I'm sure every one of you can think about duels of, whether it's of just, top programs that you watched that you enjoyed. I remember so many specific Central Michigan duels where we won or lost, and I was like either just elated or completely crushed, right? Same for Michigan duels, same, and then like, you can look back on some of the, like when Arizona State beat Penn State, like that was huge. That was awesome. It was dramatic. It had everything you could, it had upsets. It had the back and forth stuff. You have the crowd impact of it. Like it's just an exciting event, and it's so much easier for somebody to sit through one of those than a full day's tournament. Right. So from that aspect, yeah, maybe it does help grow the sport. Maybe you can get people involved for a weekend to watch an actual like series of competitive duels in that platform. It's a lot harder to get somebody like, you don't get just a whole lot of casual fans at the MSU Open. It's basically like me and then like moms and dads and like family members and coaches and like that sort of thing, But that's just, yeah, I think it can help. I think it certainly can help. You're always going to get the diehards at something like that. And if you can bring in a couple extra other people, sure. Is it going to save these sports? I don't know about that. I listened to a podcast the other day and they were just kind of like making fun of Olympic sports. They were like, I love watching the Olympics every 4 years. It's great. And then they did at least mention like, oh yeah, like judo and wrestling, like that's badass. But like, they were like, yeah, like badminton.
There probably
These guys
should be
could play.
some revamping of Olympic sports. Obviously there's a big talk is around flag football right now and whether or not we're going to have NFL players in there. And my vote is to put NFL players in there. We've seen what can happen to us in basketball, so let's not.
That'd be insane.
Yeah, like let's not have a repeat of that. Let's just start out with the dream team. We already know the result of this. But I feel like the thought around these team aspects to respond to you, Kevin, is the influx of money is really what they're trying to get to, right? We're talking about how this is a Paycom event, right? Paycom is the huge sponsor on this, right? And that's a big influx of capital that is coming into wrestling or into such and such program that ends up winning or taking second or taking third, whatever it is, right? So I feel like the team aspect is an easier way to say, hey, let's pump money into this, right? Let's get money into this event because the individual ones are being treated as, and obviously the team ones too, but the team aspect, you can tap into the tribalism of all of it. Why am I a fan of the Falcons and the Dodgers and Florida State? Like there's a tribal aspect of all of that fanship. The same thing can be said in wrestling, but it's on a very small scale where you were brought up in wrestling. You just didn't stumble upon it and you're like, oh, I'm a wrestling fan now. These things have been on TV, the major sports have been on TV for so long to the point where now you have that like camaraderie and that tribalism where when you go to a game, you don't even know the people that are sitting around you, but your team scores, you're high-fiving strangers. That's the kind of thing that they're trying to get that I feel like would be huge in wrestling because there could be so much tribalism when it comes to us having an event such as national duels or, another big duels event where you can win, a trophy or whatever else.
What else would bring in more money too? The teams participating should have to tweet out something cool about Paycom.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Austin, I want to hear
minimum 4 times
on this team aspect of things.
I'm on the side of dual meets are more fun. I think they're easier to understand if we're trying to get new fans, get more viewership. I think that goes a long way. You think about it, you're at a good duel back and forth, momentum for this guy. Oh, there's an upset at this weight. The next guy goes out and maybe has another upset. All of a sudden, the favorite team is, oh shit, we're in a hole here. We got to pull our heads out of our asses and get it together. That can be fun, getting the crowd into it. Especially if it's a home duel for, a team, that could be really, that could go a long way for someone. I do like the aspect of the individual tournament at the end of the year too. I wish there was a way to do, maybe one semester was team oriented, the next semester was individualized, something like that. Just, because the individual thing, it's been like that forever. But the scoring is kind of confusing. I'm not sure if you guys know, but like, I'm not 100% sure on how team scoring works all the time. And trying to explain that to someone that doesn't know wrestling like we do, that can be cumbersome. It's easier if you line up, all right, 10 weight classes, whoever wins gets 3 points. And then if there's bonus points involved there, but it just seems like an easier product when you have 10 wrestlers from 2 different teams on the mat going at it. Boom. It just seems like an easier thing. It's easier to explain, but yeah, I would like to see it go this way a little more. How much will it grow? I'm unsure. I'm sure there's studies out there that people are projecting this, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm glad you brought that up, Austin, because I don't know how team scoring works at individual tournaments, and I don't care. And
It's a
I know
guessing
people
game.
have tried to tell me, and I've said, nope, never going to matter to me. Someone's going to have that tally up, and I'll trust them.
Yeah,
So,
and you know wrestling too, and the fact that like
Yes.
you don't know, and a lot of us aren't 100% sure. It's like, well, let's make it a dual meet. That's a lot easier, more common sense, and we talk about big duels during the year, and how many times do we not see the big matchups we wanted in that dual meet? If we have a dual
Yeah.
meet where something it's on the line, it means something. All right, we're more likely going to see those matchups, even if a guy is a little hurt. He's going to go out there and put it for his team. Um, so there's a lot to take in there, but I would like to see it.
Agreed. Yeah. Robbie?
I love the idea. I mean, there's so many positives to it. I think there are some things to take away that could be improved, and we know it's the first year they're trying to reinstitute this, so there's gonna be some hurdles. Um, I think they did a pretty good job aligning teams. It's tough to figure out, what the top collection of teams is going to be based on last year's scoring of an individual tournament with guys who are graduating. So there's not a perfect system
Mm-hmm.
without like a qualifying round. I think that down the line, that would be pretty cool if we had like qualifying rounds, like a quarterfinal is hosted at this school. There's 4 teams there, and winner moves on to the next round. Like that'd be pretty awesome. We're not there yet. Um, I think the other thing to keep in mind with this year's setup is that, everybody just said how much more digestible it is to just watch a single duel, but now we're talking about multiple duels over 2 days. So we're still lagging the same amount of hours for a casual viewer. It's just split up differently. So that's my only concern with it. I think ultimately it's going to be a great product. You have a lot of really good teams there trying to compete for a good amount of money. Kind of have that home mat advantage for Oklahoma State with it being in Tulsa and run by Paycom, who's clearly their bankroll, their major donor there. But I think there's too many positives to have a negative outlook on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it certainly is the future. I mean, anybody who's ever been to the NCAA tournament knows it's an amazing event. But for a casual viewer sitting there for 3 days of 12-hour days it's not realistic. So to have something that's more manageable would be certainly a lot better product to put out, whether it's streaming service or TV, whatever platform it may be on. It's a much more easily digestible product.
Yeah, I agree. And to Austin's point, something that I think a lot of us, probably more of us like on the inside, have been talking about over the last couple of years is how long a season is and how it should be broken up into team and individual. And I feel like if I feel like instead of treating NCAA sports as one blanket thing of like, this is how sports work. Obviously, we have our individual rules, our individual events, and stuff like that. And, the roster caps and stuff like that will obviously be different. But they don't really treat when it comes to making decisions, they don't treat them differently. Right. So like wrestling in and of itself is the only 2-semester sport we have in college, right? Like there maybe like is maybe a couple others, but like the one that we pay attention to is a 2-semester sport. And the way that it's been broken into, it's not working anymore. The product is broken because we're either not seeing guys at this tournament or we're not getting any of these matchups. I mean, hell, the last couple of years, when we were all working for Intermat, in the last couple of years, I did an article of strictly for Big Tens. Who are the guys who are the top seeds at Big Tens and who have they not wrestled this year? And the list was so damn long of guys that were in their conference that they didn't even wrestle. Right. So could you imagine what that's like? And honestly, it wasn't because in a lot of those cases, it wasn't because they just weren't at the same places at the same time. a good majority of them were like, nah, not wrestling today. We're sitting him out for this. We're worried about protecting a seed. We're worried about this. We're worried about that. Split up the seasons. I feel like if you had a team portion of the season where it was all team focused and you had your dual meets, and at the end of it, it was basically treated like the NCAA football season, where at the end of the season, you were able to pull a number of teams. And obviously, the Big Ten really dominates in wrestling, so it's a little bit different than the SEC in football, but you're able to pull certain teams into a bracket and say, these are our top whatever teams from the Big Ten, from the Big 12, from the ACC. They're now going to wrestle for, a 3-day tournament for the team championship. And that ends the first half of the season, where it's a month and a half of dual meet wrestling, and it ends in a championship. And then the second half of the season, you can have whoever the hell you want in your lineup. You can have guys wrestling in individual tournaments, and there's a certain number of, and let's pull from UWW, a certain number of rankings tournaments that you have to go in order to get some rankings points. You miss this tournament, your ranking drops. I don't really care if you're Carter Sirachi and you're the number 1 seed, or if you're the 33rd seed coming out of, the MAC or whatever other, conference that doesn't get the same kind of credence that the Big Ten gets.
Did Carter get another year?
No. But I think if you started to treat it like that, where you have this team aspect, you can tap into the tribal nature of the fansmanship, but then you can also use that to build those storylines going into the more selfish individual part of the season. Where you're like, hey, they met during the dual meet, and during the dual meet it was this, or such and so wrestled during the dual meet season, and now they're replacing him with, the freshman that is way better for the individual side of things, right? Like, that allows for you to do some juggling with your team, for you to put a better guy in there for individuals, for you to have more gamesmanship, for there to be more storylines. It kind of sets things up for obviously people like us, but it brings fans in, because now you're truly building on the storyline that is a wrestling season. So I would love to see it go to half and half, where the first half is all team, the second half is all individual. You have your certain number of rankings tournaments where people have to be. And I mean, our rankings tournaments are literally already set up where we can move CKLV to the second half of the season. We can have Scuffle, we can have Midlands, Soldier Salute. None of them are on the same damn weekend, because that would be really, really stupid for us to do. And that way we have all of the different top level guys hitting wherever they need to hit. And who cares if they wrestle multiple times? They wrestle multiple times in a year. It happens. We've seen it. Doesn't matter. When we get to the NCAA tournament, if you wrestle again, you wrestle again. Who cares? It really doesn't. We're about to see rematches at Final X. Kyle Dake, Zahid Valencia. We just saw it a couple weeks ago. We're going to see it again. Big deal. So
I don't want to watch that again.
According to you, it doesn't matter who wrestles Zahid. He's going to lose anyway. So
no, he's going to win. Is my point.
No, that's what I said. It doesn't matter who wrestles Zahid. That person is going to lose.
Yes.
But no, that's what I'm saying. I think we should have a split part of the season, right? You have your break around the new year, get everybody ready for that individual part, and then you go from there. So I think truly having a team aspect of this, I think, would be great.
It's so funny to think that, like, originally, like, I don't know what happened first, if it was like a dual meet format first, or if there was just individual tournaments first. But I'm sure at some point somebody was like, hey, like, if we're wrestling all these dual meets, like, I think I'm the best one of all these people. We should have a tournament to make sure that, like, who's the best as an actual individual and not have to worry about our teams to win or lose. Or vice versa, right? Maybe they're like, well, hey, you guys might have won a couple weight classes, but our team is the best. And then they put together a tournament. Now we're here all these years later arguing about, like, what happened. What happened is just the emphasis got put on the individual side for some reason. Eventually they just said, this is the championship. And then eventually, as people got smarter, more or less, coaches are like, well, if that's what matters, then I'm not going to care about this other thing anymore.
But I feel like
And
that has happened over the last what 5, 7 years, maybe a little bit longer, where they're like, that's what matters. So since that's what matters, we're going to do load management. We're not going to wrestle the toughest schedule during the year. And when we get to the end of the season, we're going to be fresher and we're going to be ready, which is the complete opposite of what it used to be of like, we need to go out there and we need to be in dogfights all year so that when the biggest and baddest comes around, we need to be ready. So it is so different.
It helps though that this is not the only sport that deals with this. I mean, the NBA literally had to put restrictions on how many games you play in order to be eligible for the postseason awards.
Yeah.
It's like
And they're getting
65
paid
games.
millions of dollars. I
Right,
mean,
right,
wrestlers are
exactly.
kind of getting paid millions now too, I guess.
But yeah, it's good. I want the dual meet. I want both. I want them both to happen. That's all I got.
Any other thoughts on this? Nothing. Yeah, I think, I think we're all in agreement that we need to have uh, some sort of change. We need to revert back to, where tough wrestling is king and not just for one weekend and not just for select weekends throughout the year. I think let's make this our last topic. We've been talking for a while. We'll make this kind of a fun one. And we'll go to what came out of the Bosch and the Brain, where I think it might have been Bosch who said this. Yeah, it was Bosch who said this because Willie had the other funny anecdote of USA Wrestling sending Penn State a laundry bill from uh, one of the world championships for $250 from the world championships for washing their clothes. But apparently, instead of wrestlers who are competing in Final X just getting their allotment of tickets as they normally get, which is just 4 tickets, um, they now have to promote the event on social media in order to get their tickets, um, which is wild to me. Because if there wasn't for the wrestlers, you'd have no event to promote in the first place. What are your guys' thoughts on incentive based ticket distribution for the people that are trying to represent us at the highest stage? Robbie?
It's so stupid.
I
Like
honestly
I'm
was hoping that they were lying, but they doubled down on it.
I'm looking at tickets right now. They're $62.
Yeah.
So your 4 tickets are going to be less than $250 of value. Granted, like the proceeds to some degree are going to beat the streets, which is fantastic,
Yes.
but not all of them, right? Because it's a USA Wrestling event, so some of their pay is covering the cost of the event. So in understanding that they want more athlete buy-in to push the event, fantastic. But to stipulate a specific minimum threshold of social media posts in order to get your free tickets, that's it's just absurd. It's absolutely absurd. And what if there's an athlete who doesn't do social media? I mean, we have plenty of people now who are boycotting it, or the guys who I'm preparing for this major event. I'm blacking out social media. I'm not going on social media. Not everybody has a publicist to post things for them. Like
Tell your family to subscribe to Flow.
it's so. I mean, come on, guys. Let's let the people enjoy watching their son, daughter, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, whatever it is. Just let them have their tickets. Like, what are we doing?
How
Like,
are we going to
okay.
promote the sport, Robbie, unless we force people to tweet about it?
Oh my
That's a
God.
good point.
How?
You must hate wrestling.
I do. It makes me angry.
Very angry. Austin, your thoughts?
But on the same note, though, on our side, this is one of the easier events to get a media credential for. So it's easier for me to get a media credential than it is for an athlete to get tickets for their family to watch them. Like that's
Give them ideas, Robbie.
yeah. I'm gonna have to send some posts out about it just now. Now that I said that,
Yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna
what's gonna
schedule
happen.
some tweets.
That's what's gonna happen. You're gonna have to start posting.
Oh my
I'm in
god.
Texas, so I'm very far away from where the event is happening. So I'm not getting credentials. I didn't know what it was even like to get a credential.
You don't
But
even have to have a background check or safe sport. Like you have to be in the USA Wrestling pool and be approved through the USA Wrestling pool, but you don't have to do the two steps you normally have to do to cover a USA Wrestling event because it's put on by Beat the Streets. So it's
that's weird.
yeah,
Or I
it's
mean, or
something.
is it, or are you just up to date on your safe sport?
I am, but there it legitimately said in the email you don't have to do the background check or safe sport to be eligible to be considered for the pool.
Oh,
And there's accreditation for it and you have to be like
yeah,
legitimately involved in it. It's not anybody can apply for it, but they they research who it is, but still the steps aren't the same. And the
yeah.
fact that it's easier for me to do that than it is for Kyle Dake to let his wife go for free. Like, come on, what are we doing here?
Just get her a credential.
There we go.
That's your way around it.
Is
Just
she aging backwards? Can she get a children's ticket too?
probably. I mean, just what I would do, I would be like, listen, I'm gonna have my own media team there covering. I need credentials for these four people.
I mean, that's how we do it at a lot of teams do it at NCAA's. And I mean, if we're being honest, like,
Yeah.
oh, team photographer who never is actually going to take any pictures, but they're there.
Yeah.
They're there watching.
There's ways to get into it, I guess. Austin, your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it just seems kind of silly to me forcing these wrestlers to do it. I'm not sure if that's a USA Wrestling, a Flow, I'm not sure who that came from exactly,
I
but
believe it's USA Wrestling.
I
yeah,
blame Brendan Buckley.
yeah, if that's the case, that to me that means like, hey, we're not good at promoting, so you guys need to help us out. I mean, that's one way it can be taken, right? Not saying that's the case, but it just seems strange that you're kind of making these athletes do that. I mean, I understand the media when you have to do for the Super Bowl, like you had media appearances. I mean, I guess that's kind of in line with this, but
They have those though too.
Yeah.
yeah, that's they have that as well, right? Immediate at Final X. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it doesn't make. I'm just trying to come up with a good reason. I'm
There
kind
I
of
don't think
falling
there
flat on
is
my face
one.
here. Yeah,
I
so
think you're one step away from saying if you're on the national team ladder, you are mandated to have a certain number of posts supporting USA Wrestling every month. Like, come on. That's it's just weird.
yeah,
Come
it
on.
seems very strange to me. Yeah, I just hey, this is a big moment. Some guys will never get this far again. Some girls may never get this far again. Let their family go there without being the post. But a post can be 30 seconds long. So again, is it the end of the world? I don't think so, but it's silly to make them do it. It seems very strange.
It's
Yeah,
Well,
made
and
people who are trying to get on a world team jump through hoops so they can have
Yeah,
people
that's
that care
yeah,
about them
it's
watch.
silly. It's silly.
it is. Kevin, you have the final
it's
word on this, and we're gonna wrap things up for the night.
the, I totally get wanting to promote the sport, wanting to promote the event, wanting to have encouragement and participation and cooperation from the people who are participating, and therefore maybe suggest or encourage or explain how it can benefit the
It'd be a
event,
great idea.
or lean into the people you want to promote it and say, hey, would you be interested in doing some extra stuff? We think that you're charismatic and would be a great person to help promote this for whatever reason.
That's how you get faces of the
And
sport.
right, but like to not see the forest through the trees and the publicity that this is giving them, like, dude, this is a bad idea to obligate this. Can we maybe not do this for a second? It's going back to the Gilman thing. How many adults are involved in this decision?
Again, I really hope that this is wrong, and that this
Yes.
wasn't real, right? I'm
I
hoping.
and I can only assume that it was somebody who was strongly encouraged, whatever. Hey, this is going to be helpful. It as a reasonable person, I will just think that that's the case. That has to be. It can't
It,
possibly be. It can't.
I mean, yeah, I have yet to see any posts from any wrestlers in it though. I haven't really been paying that close attention to it, but like I haven't like just scrolling, it hasn't come up, so I haven't
Well,
seen it.
and then the backlash from that is you get a smart ass like me who's going to try to figure out the worst way to post about this, but like still like, maintain your obligation.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
just here
excited
because
for
I don't
Trent
get time.
Hidley's.
Yeah.
Trent's is just going to be live wrestling, Final X.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'm wrestling here. Don't come.
Yeah. I need to get my family in, so I need to tweet. It needs
Yeah.
7,000
They're holding
retweets.
these seats hostage.
If I
Like I
get
said,
8,000 retweets, I get a 5th ticket.
Yeah,
From my
right.
grandmother.
It's insane. Like I said, I hope that's not real. But
How many impressions do you have to get club seats?
yeah,
What are we talking for a suite here?
and I'll be. I mean, were you guys at the last Final X in Newark? Not even
Last
close.
one I was at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, not even
last
close
one.
to sold out. Like there were a good amount of people there, but there were a good amount of open seats there. So like you're not hurting for tickets, right? Like I'm gonna tell you, like the 4 ticket allotment for each wrestler is pretty crazy. It is, but I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm sure we'll have a good show. We'll have good matches. We'll name our national team as well as our world team member, and we'll go from there. But like I said, I hope this isn't real. But we'll see. It certainly will. Any other final thoughts, or we ready to put a bow on this one for the night?
But another Chappelle Show reference.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up, please.
I guess that is a wrap for the Quad Pod, sponsored by Poseidon Strength. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Send us your hot takes. Put your different comments down below. Anything that we referenced will be included and linked down below the video as well. Make sure you're sharing, subscribing, telling people about us.
4 posts at least.
I need at least 4 comments. Cornell Kevin, I'm talking to you. He used to be Slap the Mat. Now he's Cornell Kevin. I know you'll set us up with a good bit of comments. So, but no, we honestly appreciate it. Shout out. I started the episode by giving a shout out to Easton Wrestling. I'm going to end it by giving a shout out to my friend Seth Sasuli, who was also a Lehigh wrestler, who enjoyed the first podcast. So appreciate Seth, aka Spark, for doing the posting thing on the good old YouTube and letting us know that he enjoyed it. That man is actually really, really smart. I hope for someday him and I get a chance to work together. He's really, really good at creating websites and stuff. So at some point we will definitely link up. We worked together a while back on a project back in, what was that, like 2010? So shout out to him. Appreciate it. Shout out to everybody else that did comment and like and subscribe and all that other fun stuff. As I said, make sure you guys head to Poseidon Strength, use our discount code QuadPod, and we will see you again next Wednesday.